Welcome to Boardello, where you will learn everything about games you were curious about, but were afraid to ask. Everyone plays board games. It's natural, not sinful. We are your hosts, James, Johan, and Nicholas.
I love audition season. This year's calendar is going to be the best, much like this bourbon.
You're as picky with your spirits as you are with your women. Not at all.
Number one, come in.
No.
Next.
No. Out. Who's the next one? Who's this fine recruit?
This is Deck Builder, the literal deck building game from Greater Than Games and Dice Hate Me games.
So, why should you be in the calendar?
Says here it can get the job done in 15 minutes flat.
Go on.
It continues to list that it always handles 2 people at a time, and it prefers ages 13 and up.
You slut.
I admit I like the theme, even if at first glance it seems like it was just picked for the pun.
It's the closest we'll get to building a deck in a while, especially after how long it's been since our last attempt.
This is a deluxe patio I asked for. I give you $7,000 for this job.
Most of it went to the hot tub.
This looks like urine.
There wasn't a lot left for the chlorine.
That was quite the fiasco. Let's see what Deck Builder has in store for us.
Each player's goal is to have the deck with the most points, the best deck. For setting up the game, there will be 2 purchase piles, a stain token pile, and each player will have an empty space in front of them called their build area, where their titular decks will go, and a starting hand of 3 cards. On your turn, you can choose between taking 3 different actions. 1, you can buy new building cards from a card pile, or purchase pile, which you do by seeing how many of these screws you have, and taking up to that amount of these screws. These screws also tell you how many points these cards will be worth at the end of the game. These bot cards go straight into your discard pile. 2, you can build onto a build area, or your deck, by putting a card on it. You can do this to your deck or your opponent's deck. Unless it's the very first card, whenever you place a card, it has to touch another card by either being adjacent to it, up, down, left, or right, or by being put on top of it, negating the card underneath it. You can't build on top of another card if it's stained. Speaking of which, the third thing you can do is stain parts of yours or your opponent's deck, which means other cards can't be laid on top of them. The stain can be in 1, 2, or 4 cards, but must completely be on cards, so it can't be just 3. You can choose to do 2 of these 3 actions, or even the same action twice. Once you've done this, you discard your whole remaining hand and draw a new 3-card hand. If your draw pile is empty, like it will be on your first turn, then you shuffle your discard pile and that becomes your draw pile. There are 3 different kinds of cards to build with. One type is the most common kind, planks, which, in the order of their point values, come in rotten, pine, cedar, and mahogany flavors.
I feel like I'm learning a lot about wood today. Not that I need to know anything about wood, am I right?
Oh, Nick, you're terrible with wood. Somehow.
Your starting hand will be 2 pine planks and a rotten plank. You also have railings, which can only connect the planks ass first, and come in normal and ornate flavors. And lastly, you have stairs, which are placed the same way as railings and are worth the same amount of points as either normal or ornate railings, depending on how you decide to score them at the end of the game. What makes them special is that instead of front screws, they have a symbol that shows that they can be traded in for another action, as opposed to playing it. They also throw you off when they're in the purchase pile by costing either 1 or 4 screws, whereas usually higher value cards always cost more screws. Let's go through a few turns. We'll start in the middle of a game here, my turn. For my first action, I'm going to buy a card from the purchase pile. That goes straight into my discard pile. Then, I'll play a mahogany, the highest scoring plank card. That's 2 actions, and that'll be the end of my turn. I discard the rest of the hand, and I draw a new hand after that. Now it's Nick's turn. He plays a rotten plank on my mahogany as his first action, and as his second action, he'll stain that rotten plank, so that I can't change it and it stays a bad card for the rest of the game. My turn again. I'll buy something from the purchase pile again, since it looks like a good card with 4 screws, and instead it stairs. Not the end of the world. As my second action, I'll play a cedar that I had in my hand, and then I'll trade in another stair card that I already had in my hand to the bottom of the purchase pile to buy 1 more action, which I'll use to stain that cedar. This way, Nick won't take it away from me. Nick's turn once more. He plays a mahogany, his 4th one right next to all the other ones. and now he'll stain all 4 of them at the same time, guaranteeing that he'll have them until the end of the game. No, that's fantastic. I'm happy for him. Once either a player has completely run out of cards in their hand, draw deck, and discard pile, or one of the purchase piles has been emptied, the game ends, with the player that didn't start getting one last turn if they weren't the one that ended the game. Scoring works like this. You count the screws showing, and any adjacent identical cards are added and then multiplied by how many of them are adjacent. Therefore, 4 adjacent mahoganies are worth 4 each, which adds up to 16, and then after that you multiply them by 4, which makes 64. You can choose to make stairs equal 2 screws like normal railings, or 3 screws like ornate railings, whichever one might get you the most points. Lastly, railings count as adjacent even if they're diagonal on the corner, so they go around the corner essentially.
How'd you feel about the candidate today?
Deck Builder is a surprisingly deep game, but not too deep. What intrigues me about Deck Builder is the level of interaction it provides each player. When we usually see deck building games, they are more like solitaire, with each player vying to buy cards from a communal pile or row. As a reminder, interaction is the ability to affect what the other players are doing either positively or negatively. It gives players the ability to rebound, which is a player's ability to come back from behind in a game. Being able to place rotten planks on opponents' pieces lets you stall their plan or lessen their points total, considering it's calculated on a multiplier. This is a niche in the deck building game pantheon and gives this innocuous little game some originality. Like all deck builders, it is a race of sorts, but in this race you can trip up your opponent some. Interaction and rebound help play into another one of our coveted theory designs, that of depth. Depth refers to the amount of actions that a player can take, or rather the choices they can make each and every turn. Being able to choose to stain, play on an opponent, or buy is a great number of options for a simple little game. It's that kind of simplicity that affords depth that lends to great design and entertaining gameplay.
Well said. So does Deck Builder make it into the calendar?
I believe the Deck Builder is, shall we say, on deck, to be placed in the calendar for sure. I can't recommend Deck Builder to be the only entertainment for a full night of carousing, but as a short diversion and needed quickie, Deck Builder certainly can satisfy any game player.
Thank you for auditioning today. We'll contact you when shooting begins.
You know what? Maybe we'll learn how to build a deck properly from that one. It's not even like the first time was that bad.
Nicholas, our attempt to build a deck was a disaster. It was just the 2 of us and somehow it turned into a labor dispute.
You formed a workers' union.
I asked you to open the shed. I'm a human being, not a robot.
You hired an illegal immigrant.
Ich werde deiner Mutter zum Schreien.
How are we supposed to pay him?
My German's not perfect, so he either agreed to half minimum wage, or he's taking a car.
The only good thing was the alcohol we got for the occasion.
Well, we could buy more.
My wallet was in the car.